The garden gnome stared back at Karen Holloway with what seemed like pure defiance. Its chipped red hat and moss-covered base were, in her mind, a direct violation of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association's meticulously crafted landscaping guidelines. "Not in my neighborhood," she muttered, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the steering wheel of her pearl-white Mercedes SUV. Jack Peterson, her unsuspecting neighbor, had no idea the storm brewing just beyond his perfectly trimmed hedges. For 3 weeks, Karen had been collecting photographic evidence of what she considered egregious infractions. The gnome, positioned 2 inches outside the approved landscaping zone, a subtle variance in grass height that deviated from the HOA's sanctioned 2.5-inch regulation, and most offensively, a lawn chair that was a shade of blue not approved in the community color palette. Karen adjusted her designer sunglasses and reached for her leather-bound HOA rulebook. She had highlighted, color-coded, and annotated every single page. To her, this wasn't just about rules. This was about maintaining the pristine reputation of Oak Ridge Estates. Her phone buzzed. A text from her husband, Robert, a corporate lawyer who had long since learned to tune out her HOA crusades. "Another meeting tonight?" She responded with a crisp, "Justice doesn't rest." Jack Peterson represented everything Karen despised in a homeowner. Mid-40s casual tech engineer who worked from home, seemingly oblivious to the delicate social ecosystem of their gated community. His lawn was technically within regulations, but Karen knew, she just knew, he was pushing boundaries. What Jack didn't realize was that Karen Holloway wasn't just another HOA board member. She was a force of municipal bureaucratic precision, a woman who had spent the last decade transforming Oak Ridge Estates into her personal kingdom of conformity. As she stepped out of her car, her high heels clicking against the perfectly maintained sidewalk, she pulled out her digital camera. Evidence. Always collect evidence. Little did Jack know that this seemingly mundane morning would mark the beginning of a legal battle that would consume both their lives, drain their bank accounts, and expose the dark, petty underbelly of suburban power dynamics. The HOA hearing room felt like Karen's personal coliseum. Fluorescent lights glinted off the laminated rulebooks, and the 5-person board sat with varying degrees of anticipation and mild discomfort. Jack Peterson looked bewildered, his casual tech company polo a stark contrast to Karen's tailored navy blazer and pearl earrings. She had meticulously prepared a 37-slide presentation documenting every single infraction. "Mr. Peterson," Karen began, her voice a razor-sharp instrument of bureaucratic precision, "your property represents a clear and present danger to the aesthetic integrity of Oak Ridge Estates." The slides clicked through, the gnome measured and annotated. Lawn grass precisely quantified using digital measuring tools. A color-coded diagram showing the blue lawn chair's deviation from approved hues. Jack's lawyer, a bored-looking woman named Sandra Mitchell, barely suppressed a yawn. "Ms. Holloway, you're seriously bringing a formal complaint about a garden gnome?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "Rules are rules, Ms. Mitchell. Today it's a gnome. Tomorrow it's complete anarchy." The board members exchanged glances. Some looked amused. Others looked tired. But Karen didn't care about their opinions. She cared about order, about maintaining the pristine vision of suburban perfection she had championed for years. What none of them knew was that this hearing was merely the opening move in Karen's grand strategy. She had been planning this confrontation for months, collecting evidence, building her case with the meticulous attention of a general preparing for war. Jack finally spoke, his voice a mixture of disbelief and mounting frustration. "This is ridiculous. It's a gnome. A 2-inch deviation. Are you serious?" "Precisely 2 inches and 3/4, Karen corrected, clicking to a zoomed-in slide. "Deviation matters, Mr. Peterson. Civilization is built on attention to detail." Sandra leaned back, spinning her pen. "My client's property meets all substantive HOA guidelines. The infractions you're citing are so minor they're essentially non-existent." But Karen had anticipated this argument. She had backup. Extensive, exhaustive backup. The Karen continued, a surreal dance of bureaucratic absurdity. Karen presented her evidence with the passion of a prosecutor, each slide a calculated blow against what she saw as suburban disorder. What Jack didn't realize was that Karen Holloway never lost, and she was just getting started. The first legal document arrived on a Tuesday. Certified mail, crisp white envelope with official stamps that made Jack's hands tremble slightly as he opened it. Lawsuit. $50,000 in damages and potential HOA sanctions. Karen's strategy was brutally elegant. She had documented not just the gnome, but a comprehensive list of alleged infractions. The lawn chair's unauthorized color, grass height variations, a bird bath positioned 3 inches outside the designated landscaping zone, and what she termed persistent aesthetic noncompliance. Robert Holloway, Karen's attorney husband, had reviewed every single line. "This isn't just about rules anymore," he told her over dinner. "This is about making an example." Jack's wife, Elena, a high school art teacher, was the first to truly understand the depth of Karen's vendetta. "This isn't normal," she told Jack one evening, watching him pore over legal documents. "This is pathological." But Karen was operating on a different frequency. Each legal filing, each measured photograph, each meticulously documented infraction was a testament to her worldview. Order, conformity, control. The neighborhood watched, a mix of horror and fascination. Some neighbors secretly admired Karen's determination. Others were terrified they might be next. Mark Reynolds, the HOA board president, tried to mediate. "Karen, this seems excessive." Her response was chilling in its simplicity. "Rules are what separate us from chaos." As the legal battle intensified, Jack's tech company began to notice. Stress meetings with the HR whispered conversations about his situation. The lawsuit wasn't just attacking his property, it was attacking his entire life. Karen knew exactly what she was doing. Each legal motion was a calculated strike, designed not just to win, but to utterly demolish her opponent's spirit. What she didn't anticipate was how this war would change her. Each victory would come with a cost she couldn't yet see. 6 months into the lawsuit, Karen's obsession had transformed from a calculated strategy to a full-blown psychological crusade. Her meticulously maintained home began to show signs of her deteriorating mental state. Stacks of legal documents covered dining room tables. Photographs of Jack's property were pinned to walls like a detective's evidence board. Robert started spending more time at the office, distancing himself from what was becoming an increasingly volatile situation. "This isn't about the gnome anymore," Elena Peterson told her husband. "This is about something deeper." Jack had hired a more aggressive lawyer, Marcus Thompson, a pit bull in an expensive suit who saw Karen's lawsuit as more than just a local dispute. "This is about systemic bullying," he told Jack, "and we're going to expose it." The local news caught wind of the story. A human interest piece about HOA overreach quickly went viral. Suddenly, Karen wasn't just a neighborhood legend, she was becoming a cautionary tale. Social media erupted. Memes featuring Karen's meticulously measured lawn infractions spread like wildfire. Tech forums discussed the lawsuit as a bizarre example of suburban power dynamics. Jack's colleagues started a crowdfunding campaign to support his legal defense. Karen watched it all with a mixture of rage and calculation. Each meme, each news story was another piece of evidence. Another way to prove her point about order, about rules. The cost was mounting. Her reputation was fracturing. Neighbors who once feared her now pitied her. The HOA board began to distance themselves, seeing her as a liability rather than an asset. Marcus Thompson's strategy was brilliant. He wasn't just defending Jack. He was putting the entire concept of HOA micromanagement on trial. "Ms. Holloway has weaponized bureaucracy," he would later argue in court. "She's turned a community protection mechanism into a personal vendetta." Karen knew she was being painted as the villain, but in her mind, she was the last line of defense against suburban chaos. The lawsuit was no longer about a gnome. It was about something far more fundamental: who gets to define community standards. The courtroom felt like a gladiatorial arena, with Karen and Jack as unwilling combatants in a battle that had long since transcended its original purpose. Judge Eleanor Martinez was no stranger to HOA disputes, but this case was different. She spent weeks reviewing the mountain of evidence, meticulously measured lawn photographs, color-coded charts of infractions, and psychological assessments that painted a complex picture of community dynamics. "Ms. Holloway," the judge began, her voice cutting through the courtroom's tension, "you submitted 247 separate infractions against Mr. Peterson. 247 distinct claims, each measuring fractions of inches, colors, and positioning." Karen sat ramrod straight, her designer sued honor of perceived respectability. "Each infraction matters, Your Honor. Civilization is built on precision." Marcus Thompson's cross-examination was a surgical strike. He brought in expert witnesses, community psychologists, urban planners, even a sociologist who specialized in neighborhood dynamics. "This isn't about rules," Dr. Elizabeth Reyes testified. "This is about control. Ms. Holloway has transformed community protection into a form of psychological warfare." The most damning testimony came unexpectedly from Robert Holloway. Called as a character witness, he revealed more than Karen had anticipated. Karen lost her brother in a car accident when she was 17, he explained softly. He was killed by a driver who didn't follow the rules. Since then, she's been trying to control everything. The courtroom fell silent. Suddenly, the lawsuit wasn't about a gnome or a lawn chair. It was about grief, about trauma, about a woman who had weaponized bureaucracy as a shield against a world that felt fundamentally unpredictable. Jack Peterson watched his initial anger transforming into something closer to understanding. Elena squeezed his hand, tears in her eyes. Judge Martinez knew this was more than a typical HOA dispute. This was a case study in suburban psychological dynamics and the human need for control and the fine line between protection and persecution. The first day of the trial concluded not with a victor, but with a profound sense of human complexity. Karen had always believed that rules were what separated civilization from chaos, but now, for the first time, she was being forced to confront the possibility that her rules might be a manifestation of her. $440,000 in damages, not just to Jack Peterson, but to the entire Oak Ridge Estates community. Judge Martinez's ruling was unprecedented, a legal reprimand that went far beyond a simple property dispute. Ms. Holloway, the judge had stated, her voice a mixture of compassion and stern rebuke, "Your actions represent a systematic abuse of community governance." This judgment is not just about monetary compensation, but about restoring the fundamental principles of neighborly respect. Karen's world imploded. Her meticulously constructed life, the perfect lawn, the immaculate home, the reputation as the HOA's most zealous enforcer began to crumble. Robert filed for divorce 3 weeks after the verdict. "I can't watch you destroy yourself," he told her, his voice a mixture of sadness and relief. "This isn't living. This is a form of self-destruction." The neighborhood watched. Some felt vindication. Others felt a strange mix of pity and horror. Jack Peterson, surprisingly, was the most measured. "I never wanted this," he told Elena one evening. "I just wanted to live my life." But the lawsuit had changed everything. Jack's tech company had been watching. The viral nature of the dispute had made him something of a folk hero in Silicon Valley. Job offers started pouring in. Speaking engagements about community dynamics. A potential book deal. Karen's professional life disintegrated. Her real estate consulting firm collapsed. Clients didn't want to be associated with the HOA Karen, who had become an internet meme. Her therapist, Dr. Marcus Goldman, saw something deeper. This was never about rules, he told her during their most breakthrough session. This was about control, about trying to prevent the randomness that took your brother. The irony wasn't lost on Karen. In her desperate attempt to control everything, she had lost everything. The garden gnome, the original source of contention, sat in a box in her now half-empty house, a symbol of everything she had lost, a reminder that sometimes the most destructive force isn't chaos. She lost everything, her marriage, her career, her standing in the community. But in the quiet aftermath of destruction, something unexpected emerged: self-reflection. The small apartment she now called home was sparse. No meticulously measured decorations, no color-coded rulebooks, just the essentials and a single framed photograph of her brother, the one whose unexpected death had set her entire life's trajectory. Therapy with Dr. Goldman had been brutal and transformative. Layer by layer, they'd excavated the trauma that had driven her obsessive need for control. Her brother's random, senseless death had fractured something fundamental in her understanding of the world. Rules can't prevent pain, Dr. Goldman had told her during one particularly raw session. They can only create the illusion of safety. Jack Peterson's life had transformed too. The lawsuit had become a catalyst for something larger. He'd started a nonprofit focused on community mediation, using his experience to help neighborhoods resolve conflicts before they escalated. Unexpectedly, he reached out to Karen, not with anger, not with legal documents, but with an invitation to speak at his first community conflict resolution workshop. "Your story matters," he'd written in an email, not as a cautionary tale, but as a path to understanding. Elena had been skeptical. "Are you sure?" she asked Jack. After everything? Jack's response was simple. "Healing isn't about forgiveness. It's about understanding." Karen's hands trembled when she read the email. Part of her wanted to retreat, to hide from the vulnerability. But another part, a part she was just beginning to discover, understood the opportunity for something different. For the first time in years, she saw the possibility of reconstruction. Not through rigid rules, but through genuine human connection. The garden gnome, that original symbol of her downfall, sat on a small shelf. No longer a weapon, just a reminder of how far she'd come, of how much further she could go. 5 years after the lawsuit that had defined her life, Karen Holloway stood before a room of community leaders, her hands steady, her voice clear. "Control is an illusion," she began. "Community is a living, breathing organism, not a set of rules to be enforced, but a network of human connections to be nurtured." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The woman who had once weaponized every inch of HOA regulations was now teaching conflict resolution. Jack Peterson sat in the back of the room, a quiet smile of understanding on his face. Her journey hadn't been linear. There were still moments of struggle, times when the old impulse to measure, to control, would rise up. But therapy, self-reflection, and genuine human connection had transformed her. The lawsuit had been her rock bottom, but had also been her resurrection. Robert had remarried. The HOA had restructured its leadership. Jack's mediation nonprofit had become a national model for community conflict resolution. And the garden gnome, it traveled with Karen, no longer a symbol of conflict, but a reminder of how far she'd come. Sometimes healing isn't about perfection. It's about understanding the imperfections. As she concluded her talk, a question from the audience caught her off guard. Do you regret any of it? Karen paused. The room held its breath. Regret is too simple a word, she said finally. I understand now that our deepest conflicts are never about the surface issue. They're about our hidden wounds, our unspoken fears. The guardian gnome sat on the podium, a silent witness to a journey of transformation.